Are we on the brink of sacrificing our precious oceans for the sake of progress? That blunt and unsettling question, echoed recently by Portugal's Prime Minister, Luis Montenegro, at the Third United Nations Ocean Conference in the city of Nice in France, is forcing the world to re-examine its relationship with the vast waters that cradle our existence. Picture it, a grand hall filled with delegates from all corners of the globe, hushed as Montenegro takes the stage and insists that humanity is at a crossroad. Either we preserve the ocean's bounty for generations to come, or we submit to unsustainable extraction practices that may lead us into uncharted and dangerous territory. What exactly is fueling this intense debate, and how does it connect to the future of our shared planet? Today, we will dive headfirst into this dramatic storyline of deep-sea mining controversies, high-stakes international agreements, and a bold quest to protect 30% of the ocean by the year 2030. Get ready, because we will unveil every key point, the details behind the newly approved moratorium on deep-sea mining, the crucial role of science in shaping policy decisions, the deeply personal stories of fishermen whose livelihoods are at stake, and the unstoppable momentum building toward the upcoming climate conference in Belém in Brazil. To truly capture the essence of this unfolding saga, we must begin with the source of so much hope and fear, the ocean's hidden depths. For centuries, the sea has ignited our imaginations with tales of undiscovered wonders and unimaginable wealth. The possibility of mining the seabed for minerals has stirred up controversy for decades, but never before has the debate reached such a fever pitch. As the world grapples with climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss, explorers, scientists, and policymakers alike have grown ever more curious. Could the precious metals lying on the ocean floor be the key to a more sustainable future? Or would mining them trigger an irreversible cascade of destruction that devastates marine ecosystems? Luis Montenegro's powerful presence at the conference signals that Portugal, a nation whose territory is more than 97% ocean, is ready to address these questions with seriousness and determination. We have a responsibility that extends beyond our shores, he insisted, underscoring the extent of Portuguese waters stretching far into the Atlantic. But it is not just about moral duty. There is another compelling reason behind their stance. Imagine fishermen watching their centuries-old traditions threatened by modern conservation measures, or global companies scouring the seafloor for rare metals used in high-tech industries. The tension between preserving marine life and ensuring economic opportunity has never been sharper. That conflict injects a sense of urgency, and the Prime Minister's speech in France makes it clear. If we fail to strike a balance, we could compromise millions of lives and risk leaving our children with a depleted ocean. Before we delve deeper, let us map out the key revelations that will anchor our exploration. First, we will uncover the story behind the moratorium on deep-sea mining until the year 2050. Why such a distant timeline, and what implications does it hold for governments, corporations, and local communities? Second, we will analyze the ambitious target of 30% ocean protection by 2030, an international crusade that Portugal embraces wholeheartedly. Is this goal feasible, or is it an idealistic dream hindered by financial, political, and cultural obstacles? Third, we will dissect the ramifications of establishing new marine protection areas and how such zones affect everyone from scientists to salt-of-the-earth fishing families worried about losing their livelihood. Lastly, we will illuminate the High Seas Treaty, the so-called BBNJ agreement. Widely heralded as a triumph for global collaboration, it promises to protect marine biodiversity in the vast stretches of ocean beyond national jurisdiction. Even as we discuss these grand commitments, an undercurrent of suspicion lingers. Are these grand gestures genuine, or might they be clever attempts at greenwashing, stalling progress while the world's largest players maneuver for an advantage? After all, sustainable development has become an alluring label for many projects, including those seeking to extract resources from the ocean's depths. Luis Montenegro seeks to quell doubts through tangible actions, championing oceanographic campaigns, financing alternative work for fishermen affected by fishing bans, and firmly reminding the international community of the triple planetary crisis: climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Perhaps the most contentious point of debate lies with deep-sea mining. Images of giant machines raking the seabed have sparked outrage and alarm among environmentalists, who claim that these operations could obliterate slow-growing corals, sponges, and other creatures we have scarcely begun to understand. That is precisely why Portugal, among others, has backed the ban until the year 2050. They want robust scientific research capable of verifying the effects of such mining before it can be unleashed on a large scale. But will this freeze genuinely protect the ocean, or will it merely postpone the inevitable? For coastal nations with immense maritime zones, arguments swirl about the potential revenues they could be missing out on. Yet for each dream of economic gain, there is an equally potent nightmare of deep-sea devastation. Perhaps it is the vivid contradictions that make this story so riveting. On one hand, we have the bright possibility offered by science and discovery, advanced ocean observation capabilities, new technologies to measure ecosystem health, and the Starship-like promise of forging unprecedented knowledge about what lies far beneath the waves. On the other hand, we must face harsh realities. The Earth is running out of time to avert dangerous climate tipping points, and ocean pollution is reaching catastrophic levels. Those in positions of power must weave a delicate balance between bold innovation and careful stewardship. It is in this cauldron of uncertainty that Luis Montenegro's impassioned plea resonates. He insists that Portugal will embrace robust scientific principles as the foundation for decision-making, and in so doing, his government invests in ocean observation missions, cutting-edge technology, and new frameworks that ensure the environment gets factored into any economic equation. If you find this escalating tension as fascinating as we do, give this moment a nod of appreciation. Your support will help these vital oceanic discussions resonate even further, reaching those who most need to hear them. But do these pledges and partnerships have any real teeth? Skeptics note that many UN conferences yield ambitious commitments, only for nations to backtrack once the media spotlight dims. Montenegro, however, counters with the upcoming events that promise to bolster the momentum. Chief among them is the pivotal climate conference slated to take place in Belém in Brazil, known as COP30. He foresees that gathering as a prime opportunity to reinforce the ocean-climate biodiversity nexus, to further embed marine advocates within the wider conversation on greenhouse gases and valuable habitats. And that is not all. The creation of an emissions control zone in the Northeast Atlantic stands as another key piece to the puzzle, aiming to reduce the maritime sector's carbon emissions. Will these initiatives push talk into actual action, or will they be overshadowed by political bickering and business interests? To better comprehend the path ahead, it helps to trace how Portugal arrived at such a leadership position. Only last year, the nation co-hosted, together with Kenya, the Second Ocean Conference, an event widely celebrated for injecting renewed vigor into negotiations over the High Seas Treaty, colloquially known as the BBNJ Agreement. That gathering also set the stage for serious conversation about the 30% ocean protection target by 2030. With each subsequent forum, the impetus for real change appears to grow stronger. Today, ministers and diplomats speak more confidently about forging a future in which sustainable fishing, cross-border cooperation, and advanced scientific inquiry coexist in harmony with robust conservation strategies. Each step pulls us further from the brink and closer to a new ocean ethic that values long-term preservation over short-term exploitation. Yet the path forward is far from smooth. Commercial fishing lobbies worry that restrictions will ravage their industry, leaving their fleets idle. Environmentalists press for more urgent measures, skeptical that even 30% ocean protection will suffice. Meanwhile, local communities used to open-access fishing zones wonder if they will be compensated fairly or if they will be left empty-handed. This conflict is partly why Portugal has introduced financial compensation mechanisms for fishermen affected by bans. Policymakers hope that providing assistance to distressed communities will ease tensions, but the skepticism remains. As cynics point out, no pot of money can replace an entire legacy built by generations of families. Nevertheless, the broader directive is clear that the expansions of fishing-free zones, the enforcement of existing rules, and the creation of new marine reserves must all function within a careful, social framework that respects traditions while embracing modern scientific wisdom. Still, it takes more than strong words and a handful of conferences to achieve lasting change. A robust international legal framework stands as the next vital piece in this puzzle. That is precisely what the High Seas Treaty aims to deliver, once it is fully ratified and implemented. It endeavors to legislate on matters once deemed too complicated to tackle: genetic resources in international waters, fishing regulations for species that migrate across boundaries, and the fair sharing of benefits derived from marine life that hovers beyond any one nation's exclusive economic zone. For decades, these watery domains have existed in a legal gray area, subject to minimal oversight and rife with exploitation. The BBNJ agreement represents a tangible step toward turning those vulnerable spaces into well-monitored commons. Another key factor is the intangible but vital spirit of cooperation, something that has often eluded high-level forums in the past. Countries worry that too many restrictions will stifle growth, while some corporations fear the potential costs of switching to more environmentally friendly processes. On the other side, activists argue that the costs of inaction will be incalculably worse. Indeed, one of the loudest warnings from the Prime Minister was about the triple planetary crisis: climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. He reminded the Assembly that the ocean is not merely another resource to be tapped. It is a buffering agent that absorbs much of the planet's carbon dioxide, and it is the largest living space on Earth, teeming with creatures we have barely begun to catalog. Make no mistake, the sensitivity of biodiversity is showcased clearly in places like the Azores, the Madeira Archipelago, and other maritime realms where Portuguese scientists conduct oceanographic campaigns. These missions reveal a tapestry of life almost unimaginable, from ancient coral gardens to bioluminescent species lurking in the far reaches of submarine canyons. If commercial operations accelerate without proper guidelines, many of these unique ecosystems could vanish before we ever understand their true significance. Standing at the lectern in France, Montenegro evoked these wonders, drawing audible murmurs from delegates, especially when he mentioned that harmful practices might irreparably damage entire marine populations. This dramatic tension, an enchanting world that stands on the brink of ruin, perfectly encapsulates the reasons behind the deep-sea mining moratorium. With so much at stake, it is no wonder that the Prime Minister reaffirmed Portugal's commitment to multilateralism. Solutions must be found collectively, he insisted, and that principle resonates through every element of his ocean policy. The battle cannot be won by one nation alone, no matter how extensive its maritime domain. We need broad alliances. We need scientists from all corners of the globe, delivering open and transparent data so that policymakers can make smart decisions. We need local communities to embrace new conservation measures without feeling left behind. Most of all, we need a continued sense of urgency, a belief that inaction now invites a cascade of irreversible outcomes. Time is not on our side, and the ocean's fate is inextricably tied to our own well-being. If you are just as passionate about saving the seas, this is the perfect moment to show it. Join these efforts in spirit by tapping into your own networks. Discussions like these flourish when more voices come together, so please consider subscribing for future deep dives into pressing environmental issues. Indeed, as we edge closer to 2030, the year that has come to symbolize so many environmental targets, entire societies will be tested. Will these pledges for marine protected areas tally up to real progress, or will they degenerate into empty slogans? Government leaders know that the eyes of the world are increasingly upon them, fueling hopes that the BBNJ summit will solidify major progress on the ocean-climate biodiversity nexus. Proposals are swirling for bold expansions of marine protected zones in strategic international waters, the introduction of advanced satellite tracking for cargo ships, and the mandatory reduction of single-use plastics that often end up in the sea. Each measure is like a puzzle piece that, together, could create a new blueprint for how we live with the largest ecosystem on Earth. Yet no blueprint can succeed without the pillars of data and consultation. That is why Portugal's investments in science stand out as a potent sign of sincerity. Policymakers have insisted that every major step be grounded in comprehensive studies and analyses, factoring in that the ocean is not just a resource, but a living, breathing system. This approach echoes the new era of planetary stewardship, one that sees human beings not as conquerors of nature, but as custodians. Montenegro's government highlights its support for advanced ocean-observing technologies, from sensor-packed buoys to satellite arrays that capture real-time changes in temperature and currents. With these results fed into powerful computer models, it becomes easier to see exactly how restricting fishing activity in one region impacts fish stocks, or whether certain shipping lanes need further regulations to reduce noise pollution. We must also consider the social dimension that underpins conservation measures. It is easy to speak of banning fishing in protected areas to help fish populations rebound, but such a declaration is meaningless if the people reliant on those waters are not provided with alternative livelihoods. That is the very reason Portugal has created financial compensation systems for fishermen. While cynics argue that this merely postpones real structural change, proponents maintain that it is a necessary step to maintain social stability during the transition. With entire families having built their identities around working on the sea, there must be a fair way forward that involves strategies like retraining programs, community-led scientific research, or even tourism initiatives focused on ecotourism and marine life appreciation. The Prime Minister's acknowledgement of these people's struggles is a significant move, bridging the gap between environmental ethics and economic justice. One cannot help but wonder, how will these new policies and treaties fare in an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape where alliances can shift overnight and markets remain volatile. With war, pandemics, and inflation on many countries' minds, critics worry that ocean conservation could be reduced to an afterthought. But the continuing rhetoric from leaders like Montenegro suggests that the ocean is now recognized as both a national treasure and a global lifeline, transcending immediate political or financial crises. The fervor for tangible action, such as establishing the emissions control zone in the Northeast Atlantic, underlines the fact that environmental stewardship can, indeed, move forward even in challenging times. The next decade will prove crucial. Some experts fear that if we do not implement swift measures, by the time 2050 arrives, the moratorium on deep-sea mining may be too late to prevent irreversible harm. Others believe that new technologies for environmentally responsible extraction might emerge satisfyingly within that window, ensuring that if or when seabed mining commences, it will be far more regulated and less destructive than it could be today. Meanwhile, the High Seas Treaty stands as a mirror reflecting humanity's evolving understanding of its planetary responsibilities. No longer do we see these international waters as an alien realm, limited to fearless explorers. We now speak of them as critical components of global ecosystems. Perhaps, in the end, the true beauty of this moment lies in how it underscores our shared interdependence. Nations with vast maritime zones, such as Portugal, stand beside countries thousands of miles away, but united in a mission to safeguard the sea. Organizations dedicated to oceanic research collaborate with authorities that once regarded science as an optional extra. The synergy is evident, and the results are beginning to surface, from the sophisticated mapping of the seafloor to more equitable regulations that take into account both biodiversity and economic needs. And with the BBNJ Climate Conference looming, this synergy has the potential to reach new heights, bridging climate action and ocean conservation in ways never before seen. So, as we close this enthralling journey, remember how it began, with that jarring question, are we on the brink of sacrificing our precious oceans for the sake of progress? The resounding answer, at least from Portugal's Prime Minister and many of his allies, is a determined no. They see a future in which the sea remains not just a source of wonder, but also a bastion of sustainability, treasured by all nations and recognized for its indispensable role in balancing our climate, sustaining biodiversity, and supporting billions of livelihoods. The real test lies in our capacity to adhere to these commitments, to implement the bold treaties and frameworks already in motion, and to push for new initiatives that value the ocean as an irreplaceable ally. The recent events in France are not mere words in a speech. They symbolize a global call to action. And if we stay vigilant, engaged, and collaborative, we just might witness the birth of a brighter era for the seas, an era where environmental protection and human prosperity move forward together, hand in hand.